Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode 14 in the book of 1 Corinthians. We've been on this little passage tear of the implications of God's Spirit dwelling. And yesterday we asked, if the Spirit dwells inside of us, so what? What's the big deal? What has to change? And of course the answer is lots of things. Our identity changes, and then our application of the wisdom we have starts to ripple out and has repercussions in all kinds of parts of our lives. Today we're going to get a caution about deceiving ourselves. So listen in here. This is from 1 Corinthians chapter 3. It's the last verses of chapter 3. I'm going to start in verse 18. Let no one deceive himself. If anyone among you thinks he is wise in this age, let him become a fool that he may become wise. For the wisdom of this world is folly with God. For it is written, He catches the wise in their craftiness. And again, the Lord knows the thoughts of the wise, that they are futile. So let no one boast in men, for all things are yours, whether Paul or Apollos or Cephas or the world or life or death or present or future, all are yours. And you are Christ's, and Christ is God's. All right, so there's a tendency here, there's a warning about self-deception. So let's just put out there right now, I am capable and I am maybe even inclined to it. So what is self-deception? That's saying I think I'm terrific when I'm not terrific, or that I think I'm wise or I have wisdom when I have not God, or I think I'm wise when I have God and I don't yield to Him and acknowledge Him. So wisdom is figuring the world out, and being wise in this age is actually used in this passage as a little bit of a negative thing, as opposed to letting the mind of Christ, which is the big topic previously identified as one of our big topics here, letting the mind of Christ bathe over our lives. So he says the wisdom of the world is folly. Okay, that's foolishness. But this is interesting. He's already talked about the folly of Christ, that the cross is even, I titled one of the podcasts, The Stupid Cross, and I say that only because Scripture pretty much says it, that the way of being a Christian is going to seem like being folly or stupid, but what it turns out to be is the wisdom of Christ. And ironically, if you flip it over, the so-called wisdom of the world is going to be ultimately turned out to be judged as seen and assessed as folly. So we can deceive ourselves as to which is which. So we're supposed to become a fool when we become a Christian. We accept these sort of almost crazy things that God asks us to yield to. But don't be deceived. On the other side, and ourselves too, we are seen by God, we are known by God, and that the unwise people of this world are going to be caught in their craftiness, and they're going to be assessed and judged as futile. So finally it gets to this point about, well, what is the relationship then of these guys that the Lord has put in charge of the church? Paul himself, the writer of the book of 1 Corinthians, or Apollos, the great speaker, or Cephas, the leader of one of the churches. So let's be careful. Let's no one boast in men. Let's no one boast in, also the other side of that is having no men over them. So those men that are pastors, if you will, of the early church, it's not that we're not supposed to have pastors, it's just we're supposed to have pastors in the right perspective. So be careful of ultimately saying, well, Paul's my man. No, Christ is your man, and Paul works for him. All right, so he's going to emphasize the point that, Lord, you are the wise one. You are the sovereign one. And he's given us people to put in perspective, and life and death to put in perspective, and present and future age. So we're supposed to attach ourselves primarily with Christ. Attach ourselves secondarily with the people that he's charged with tending the flock. So basically, we do need to say that I belong to God, I boast in God, and I follow with the right perspective these guys, Paul, Apollos, and Cephas. So I think some final points in a charge. Lord, help me not be inclined towards self-deception, because I know that I am capable of it. And unwise thinking, unwise practice, unwise habits, unwise worldviews. May I use and honor the mind of Christ. May I have that blanket over my thoughts and my action, and allow it to change everything. Align my thoughts, Lord, correctly about leaders. Align my thoughts about where wisdom comes from. Align my thoughts about the future. May all my thoughts be aligned with your truths, your wisdom. So primarily, I belong to God, I boast in God, I rely on the mind of Christ, and I appropriately depend on it and then submit to the leaders that God has put in charge of his church. Thank you for listening. Thank you for attempting to be wise today with me as I attempt to be wise. I'll see you tomorrow.